At a late-night press conference on January 9, 2014, Singapore police displayed a duffel bag containing millions in cash, ransom money recovered just hours after one of the most brazen kidnappings in the nation's history. Only a day earlier, a 79-year-old woman had vanished during her quiet morning routine. But this wasn't a random victim. She was the mother of a supermarket tycoon and billionaire. Her abduction would trigger one of the most dramatic police operations Singapore had seen in years. This is the story of the Sheng Siong kidnapping, a case that shocked the nation and reminded Singaporeans that even in one of the world's safest cities, nightmares can still come true. It began as an ordinary Wednesday morning on the 8th of January 2014. 79-year-old Madam Ng Lye Poh, mother of Lim Hock Chee, the chief executive of the popular Sheng Siong supermarket chain, headed out for her daily routine in the suburban neighborhood of Hougang. For the past decade, this had been her peaceful ritual, shopping for groceries at the local market on Hougang Avenue 8, handing off her bags to a domestic helper to take home, then enjoying a simple breakfast at a nearby coffee shop. By late morning, Madam Ng was walking home alone along Hougang Avenue 2, unaware that danger was stalking her quiet steps. As she neared an overhead bridge, a car pulled up beside Madam Ng, and a stranger emerged with an urgent expression. The middle-aged man approached her and told her that her son, the supermarket tycoon Lim Hock Chee, had suffered a bad fall at the office and was seriously injured. The words sent a jolt of fear through the elderly mother. Heart pounding with worry, Madam Ng didn't think to question the stranger's identity. When he offered to drive her to see her injured son, she climbed into his car, desperate to reach her child. The man was Sze Yong, a 41-year-old Singaporean sales executive with a secret plan. What seemed like a rescue was a deception. Madam Ng, unknowingly, had just become his hostage. Once inside the car, Lee's tone changed. He didn't head to a hospital or office. Instead, he drove toward a quiet, secluded area on the city's outskirts. As the minutes passed, Madam Ng grew increasingly uneasy. Something wasn't right. Eventually, Lee pulled over, took out a blindfold, and covered her eyes, making sure she had no idea where she was being taken. Around midday on January 8th, Lim Hock Chee's phone rang from an unfamiliar number. Lee, calling from a Malaysian prepaid phone to avoid easy tracing, delivered the shocking ultimatum. He had Lim's mother, and he demanded 20 million Singapore dollars for her safe return. To prove he was serious, Lee let Madam Ng speak briefly on the phone. Lim heard his mother's shaky voice, scared but alive. Then Lee took the phone back and gave a clear warning. "Don't call the police, or your mother will be in danger." In that agonizing moment, a successful businessman found himself just a fearful son, pleading for his mother's safety. Lee instructed Lim on the ransom's terms with meticulous detail. He was to prepare millions in cash, using large bills that were not sequentially numbered. The demand was as brazen as it was staggering. 20 million Singapore dollars is a fortune, even for one of Singapore's wealthiest men. Unsure of what to do, Lim turned to his family. They knew one wrong move could put Madam Ng's life in danger. But handling this alone was too risky. So at around 2:13 p.m., about 2 hours after the ransom call, Lim quietly alerted the Singapore police. He hoped they could step in without alerting the kidnapper. What followed was one of the most urgent police operations the country had seen in over a decade. Once alerted, Singapore police acted quickly and decisively. Kidnappings were rare, and this one posed a serious threat to the country's reputation for safety. The top priority was to keep the kidnapper talking and buy time. Following police advice, Lim Hock Chee remained in contact with Lee throughout the day, carefully negotiating and stalling without raising suspicion. All the while, specialized kidnapping response teams were strategizing in the shadows, tracing calls, analyzing the kidnapper's demands, and preparing for a possible rescue operation. Lim had to project calm cooperation to the kidnapper while fearing for his mother's life with every word. He explained to Lee that raising 20 million Singapore dollars in cash on short notice was impossible. He pleaded that he had managed to gather 2 million Singapore dollars, an enormous sum, but only a tenth of the original demand. Initially, Sze Yong balked. 2 million Singapore dollars was far less than his grand ambition. But after hours of back and forth, Lee relented. With time running late, he agreed to accept 2 million Singapore dollars, and instructions were given for the money drop-off. All this time, Sze Yong was not working entirely alone. A second man was involved, Heng Chen-boon, a 50-year-old acquaintance of Lee's. However, Heng's role in the drama was not as clear-cut as it seemed. Heng had been drawn into the scheme under false pretenses. Earlier on the day of the kidnapping, Lee had told Heng that he needed help with a covert private investigation job involving an elderly woman. Trusting his friend, Heng went along, unwittingly becoming the getaway driver and assistant in what he believed was some sort of sting operation. It was only later that night, after Madam Ng was already being held captive, that Lee finally confessed to Heng that this was a real kidnapping for ransom. He even threatened to expose a personal secret of their past, a prior intimate relationship, if Heng refused to cooperate further. Caught in fear and confusion, Heng capitulated and continued to assist in the illegal confinement of Madam Ng Lye Poh. Shortly before midnight on January 8th, Lim Hock Chee received precise instructions from the kidnappers. Sembawang Park, a tranquil seaside park in the city's northern end, was chosen as the drop site. Lim was told to go alone in his own car to Car Park 2 at Sembawang Park. The night was moonless and still as he arrived at the park, carrying a heavy duffel bag filled with 2 million Singapore dollars in cash. Following Lee's directions to the letter, Mr. Lim walked to a large tree next to a dimly lit pavilion and gently placed the bag. Hidden in the shadows, elite police teams were watching, monitoring every movement. This was their chance to end the case, but they held back because Madam Ng had not yet been released. The top priority was her safety. If Lee sensed police too early, he could panic or disappear, and her life could be at risk. So, officers let the exchange play out. From a distance, Sze Yong observed the scene with extreme caution. For 15 tense minutes, he watched to ensure it wasn't a trap. Once satisfied, he crept toward the tree, unzipped the bag, and confirmed what he had been chasing for years, $2 million in cash. But Lee didn't run. Instead, knowing the park might be under surveillance, he slipped into a nearby lane, found a dense patch of vegetation, and buried the ransom. It was a calculated move. If caught, the money wouldn't be on him. With the ransom hidden, Lee moved on to the final part of his plan, releasing the hostage. In the early minutes of January 9th, Lee drove to a quiet roadside bus stop and released Madam Ng Lye Poh, just as promised. At 12:05 a.m., he made one final call to Lim, revealing her location. Within minutes, police swooped in and found her, frightened but unharmed. She was brought to the hospital for a checkup, and finally, after nearly 14 hours, the Lim family could breathe again. But for Lee and his accomplice, it was only the beginning of the end. Now that Madam Ng was safe, police moved quickly. They had been tracking the suspects for hours, waiting for the green light. In the pre-dawn hours, both men were arrested. Lee was cornered at a friend's home, while Heng Chen-boon, his accomplice, was taken from his own flat. Neither had expected such a swift response. Under questioning, Lee confessed and led police to the spot where he buried the money. By dawn, officers had recovered the entire 2 million Singapore dollars. Not a single dollar was missing. In less than 24 hours, the Singapore police had rescued the hostage, captured both kidnappers, and recovered the full ransom. News of the rescue spread fast and shocked the nation. This was Singapore's first kidnap for ransom case in over a decade, and it had targeted the mother of a well-known supermarket tycoon. Investigations revealed that the crime had been years in the making. Sze Yong was drowning in debt, over 200,000 Singapore dollars, much of it from personal loans, credit card bills, and his father's medical expenses after a stroke. He had also been living beyond his means, spending excessively on travel, a car, and lifestyle luxuries he couldn't afford. Desperate for a way out, Lee began plotting. He flipped through Forbes magazine and compiled a list of Singapore's richest families. Among the names, Peter Lim, George Quick, Sam Goy, and many more. He followed their routines, mapped out their movements, and quietly studied their lives, looking for vulnerabilities. Eventually, he set his sights on Lim Hock Chee, believing the Sheng Siong CEO would be the ideal target. His accomplice Heng wasn't a true partner. Misled and manipulated, he only realized it was a real kidnapping when it was too late. The court acknowledged his smaller role. In court, Lee made a shocking plea. He asked for the death penalty, claiming his life was beyond redemption. The judge refused, instead handing down a sentence of life imprisonment and 3 strokes of the cane. Heng was sentenced to 3 years in jail and was released early for good behavior. The Sheng Siong kidnapping remains one of the boldest and most unusual crimes in Singapore's modern history. It was a reminder that even in one of the world's safest countries, no system is immune to desperation and greed. But it also showed the power of swift action, careful planning, and justice done right. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more documentaries. Thank you for watching.